Irish Media Network. We entertain.
Greeting, folks, and welcome to Irish Media Network Sports Update. I'm your host, Joe Caulfield, and welcome to the show. Now, on today's show, we have to speak about probably the biggest news in sport around the world today, and that is last night, Liverpool were crowned English Premier League champions for the first time in 30 years. So we'll be bringing you plenty of analysis and reaction to that in the show. In addition to that, we're going to look at the revised and the updated Champions League structure for August of this year and the accelerated roadmap to return to play for the G.A.A. So plenty coming up in the show. And my guest this week joining me to chat about all of this is commentator and reporter for RTE Television Sport, presenter of Sunday Sport and sports presenter on Morning Ireland for RTE Radio 1. Darren Frehill is here. Darren, how are things?
Hi, Joe. Great to be here with you.
Thanks a million for joining us.
You're not a Liverpool fan, are you?
I was just about to ask you the same thing. I saw on Twitter last night around 10 o'clock you said phone is turning off. So I imagine you're not basking in the reflected glory of the win.
No, Man United fan, but plenty of my friends and my buddies are, and they've been waiting in the long grass.
I'm sure you're hearing from all of them today.
Good fun. You know what? I have to say, I thought actually, you know, with the lockdown and then the playing behind the closed doors, and look, no one's going to take it away from them. They're deserving champions. I was holding out some little hope that the season would just be cancelled altogether, but I thought there might be, you know, something taken from it. But I was genuinely blown away by, I guess, first of all, the scenes from Liverpool celebrations. They were on Sky Sports, and the interviews with Jurgen Klopp. Mm-hmm. And with Klopp in particular, you know, and he broke down live on television, and you saw what it meant to the guy. And I know there was many rules broken in terms of social distancing on Merseyside last night outside Anfield in particular. But, you know, incredible scenes, and, you know, they're an unbelievable club. And even though I would support one of their great rivals not so far away in Manchester, it's an amazing club. I've got lucky enough to work there many times. And it's an amazing stadium. The people of Liverpool are second to none. You know, these guys, they would do anything for you. And although I wouldn't be supporting them, I have to say, well done. And, you know, you have to enjoy these great moments, don't you?
Oh, 100%. And as you say, the scenes both in Merseyside, and everybody I know on social media was posting pictures of them celebrating, and they're fanatical. Liverpool fans are akin to Mayo football fans. They love it. It's their life, and they've been waiting so long. You have to just, you know, take your hat off to them.
No, it's a bit of a cause, isn't it?
No, it really is.
As a goalie man as well, I hope Mayo don't break their duck anytime soon.
No, yeah, like whatever about Liverpool, I can handle that. If Mayo in the All Ireland, I don't even know where I'd emigrate to move to get away from them. You'd move to Kuala Lumpur and see some lads sitting at a bar in a Mayo jersey.
It's definitely leave the country territory.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, sport is. I think, you know, that's why I got into sport in the very beginning. And look, nowadays especially, you know, it's become very serious. Sport has become very political. But when you strip it all back down, and you're a kid again, and you're kicking a ball, you're hitting a sliotar, you're passing a rugby ball. That's why you get into it, isn't it? Just for that moment last night. And, you know, look, it's well documented, the money tied up now in the Premier League especially. But when we were kids and you started following, well, it was the first division. When I show my age now, you know, that's why you got into it. You know, it was for the glory. And you could see it really meant a lot to Liverpool, you know. And look, I know these guys are on big bucks and all the rest. But, you know, genuinely, I think they were blown away and very emotional, having you know, ended the 3 decades wait for a title.
Exactly, and no more so than Jurgen Klopp. I thought his interview on Sky Sports last night was so genuine. Like, the emotion, you can't contrive that. Like, you can't fake that. It was 100% genuine, and it's a good place to start off in terms of trying to break down why this was the team to end the 30 years of hurt. I mean, since he's come in 2015, they have been in a Europa final, 2 Champions League finals, of which they've won 1. They were runners up in the league last year, only having lost 1 match, and they win it this year, having swept all before and behind them. How much credit can Klopp take and his influence on that team take for this way?
I think he can take a lot of it, to be honest. It's other great managers have come and had great Liverpool players over the past 20, 30 years, and they just couldn't get over the line. So I think huge amount of it is down to him, and very, very impressive individual. We all know what he did at Dortmund.
Mhm.
And like they were facing the giant of Bayern Munich at the time, and they became great rivals with them. But when he came into Liverpool, what was it? Was it 5 years ago? I think
2015
yeah.
October.
Liverpool were 10th, weren't they, or something like that? Like they were, hitting mid-table kind of stuff, and to turn them around, and he's done it incredibly. Very hard to put your finger on any one thing. I think it's a combination of things, and I'll kind of go through them for me anyway. First of all, I just think he's a great guy, and it's very easy to warm to him. Like he's the sort of guy, and no offense to my own boss in RT, but he's a guy you'd love to work for. You'd love if he was your boss.
Yeah.
Infectious, and
you play for him.
100%, and I think especially sport at that level, it's all about the inches, isn't it? And I think that, the players just respect him so much, and you can see that. I think as well, he's since he's come in, he's been very clever as well. And I think he's done it naturally. I don't think it's any big actor or anything, but he's just embraced the city, the culture. Talking to a few friends of mine that are over there and go over there at the weekends to watch them play on a regular basis. He's really, endeared himself to the city and to the area. He really has. And he's I think we got it in glimpses last night in his interview as well. He's totally, bought into the history of the club and the stature of the club. And, he knows the names, he knows the history. A lot of managers in a lot of clubs, they come in and they pick up their paycheck and they're out the door again. This guy is just kind of, he's bought into everything about them. I think on the field, I think he's been really, whether it's him or I'm sure he's a huge say in it, very shrewd in the transfer market. He's brought in some unbelievable players. What he's also managed to do is get every inch out of, there's one or two average players in there, but he's just made them, get the absolute maximum out of them.
Yeah.
And also I think, Joe, for me, they're unbelievable to watch. And I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? It's the way they play football.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful to watch. I know the front three get a lot of credit, don't they? But I think as a defensive unit, they're just scary, the intensity they play at, they must be one of the fittest teams in Europe. They must be, I don't know how they keep that intensity. I put on Crystal Palace the other night. I sat down and watched that. They just didn't know what hit them. And I know again, they banged in the goals. It was 4 goals that night, wasn't it? And but defensively, like the one stat that really stood out for me was Palace weren't in the Liverpool penalty area once. There was no touch of the football in the Liverpool penalty area. And, that's down to the defence. But I think the defence actually starts a lot further up the field and, they just work so well together. So, he is, for me at the minute, and football changes all the time, but Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola, best football managers by a country mile at the minute.
Yeah, and you touched on a couple of things there that I totally agree with. Like, since he's come in, he's brought in Firmino, Mane, Salah, and Van Dijk, who I think are the real linchpins. Like, also Trent Alexander-Arnold is a great homegrown lad. That story in itself, it would really make you smile, and it would take a lot of the cynicism out of sport for you. But they play with this irrepressible energy, freedom, confidence. They're incredible to watch. As a kid who grew up as a Man United fan, it's hard to say it, but like they do, you can't but stand back and admire them. In terms of the all-time great Liverpool teams, we'll say maybe even the last 30 years, the great teams that maybe didn't get over the line, where would you rank this team?
Oh, they're up there, aren't they? It was funny because I'd be friendly enough with Ronnie Whelan, and I had him on Radio 1 this morning. I was just recording a piece with him, and I had a good chat with him. Ronnie was actually quite emotional himself, and he was part of that great Liverpool team that last won it. And that was kind of when I was growing up, and that was an incredible Liverpool team, wasn't it? Like if you look, the likes of Alan Hansen, with the three Irish boys in there, we had Ray Houghton, we had Steve Staunton, who was an incredible player, and Ronnie himself, just world class. And you look at the other players like Peter Beardsley, you had, Ian Rush, like I'm leaving out guys here, but an awesome team, and they played incredible football as well. Like back then, when they last won the league, I was talking to Ronnie about this, and he was telling me that, the question afterwards was, and you'll win it again next year, and it was almost taken as given. They were that good, and they didn't, and they wouldn't for 3 decades, which is incredible. But that was a savage team. I think it's probably unfair to compare them because that Liverpool team wasn't able to compete in the European Cup as it was back then. And I think it was an awful shame with the European ban. It's kind of hard to draw the parallels, but, I think it's very hard to separate them. Ronnie himself actually said they're up there, this current team. Yeah. They're right up there, and it's hard to argue.
Yeah, and I suppose leads me on to my next question, because we had Jonathan Higgins on last week, massive Liverpool fan. He was on Morning Ireland this morning. I'd say just gloating more so than anything else. Probably quite tired after the celebration. But he was talking about Klopp using the fact that they're not really going to get to celebrate with the fans, and they're going to receive the trophy behind closed doors as an incentive to drive them on to win another title next year. And Daniel McDonald and the Independent today was talking about creating a legacy. I mean, like they won the league last night. Are they getting a bit ahead of themselves, or is there just so much left in the tank for this team?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It is really interesting. Like they were the best team. Like look at the record this season. In terms of victories, what was it? Is it 30 odd wins, 2 draws, and 1 defeat all season? Scary stuff. In terms of next year, they've a massive opportunity. They're not the complete picture. I would say they're a great team, Joe, but I don't know. I think they've got a bit of luck as well, and I don't mean that in them. I'm not trying to knock what they've done.
Yeah.
I think their squad actually needs building up. Like Manchester City, I know they lost last night, but they have a phenomenal squad, and it looks like they're going to be adding again to it. I think Liverpool have had a lot of luck with injuries, and look, at maybe create your own luck as well. Mm-hmm. I think their regime is pretty tight. But if you took Van Dijk out of it, like I think, look, a lot of people talk about him being the great player he is, but I actually think he doesn't get enough credit. Like that Liverpool defense before he arrived for the big money, it was shambolic. It's a good word. It was, probably cost them a league title, to be honest, when Stevie Gerrard was involved. It was big money, came in there, and he is phenomenal. But if something was to happen to him, I think they need to add to it, and I think, look, I just think that Klopp is just, that's him, he wants to go on and achieve great things, and the players are buying into all of this, and I think there's a lot more to come from them. I don't think they're going to have it easy. I really don't. Like Manchester City are phenomenal. They really are. I think next season's going to be really good, very interesting. Chelsea seem to have a few bob to spend again. They're investing. Manchester United, the jury's out on that one. I think Tottenham and the likes of Arsenal have fallen off a bit, but I think it's going to be really good. Now I think actually next year is going to be phenomenal. I think it's going to be an incredible race.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that point. It'd be really interesting to see the English Premier League next year. But before we get on to that, I mean, in August of this year we have the Champions League, and I know there's 4 round 16 matches yet left to play. Then there's obviously the 4 quarterfinals, 2 semi-finals, and the final. And they're going to play them all over 11 days between the 12th and the 23rd of August. Like, it's really like a World Cup or a Euro is a really condensed format. I'm really looking forward to it. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it might even be better. I'll be honest. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a bit different. It's going to be a one-off. I love the idea of, maybe taking the 2 legs out of it and on the neutral terms. I think what's interesting about it is the teams that are left in it. Like there's some cracking teams. I think the one team that's not going to be there, Chelsea, they just have too much to do against Bayern Munich. But like they are the heavyweights there. And I think what you have then is you have a couple of teams sprinkled in there, that'll think, do you know what, one-off games here, we have a chance. The Red Bull team and Atlanta from Northern Italy as well. Like that's a phenomenal story. I don't know what their situation is following the lockdown, but I know it's an incredible story. Where they've come from, but I know that part of Italy as well has been hit hard with the COVID-19. But I think it's set up really well. And the one thing that's going to be disappointing is I don't think there's going to be fans at it at this stage. There was some talk, wasn't it, a couple of weeks ago, that they might have limited fans in. And it's the one thing for me. It's great having the football back, the sport back, but the fans make it. They really do. I can't get my head around this. The adding in, layering in the fan stuff.
Making sound effects,
the sound effects. I've given it a good go. And it just feels like you're playing a game of FIFA. So I've gone back to listening to the game or watching the games without the sound effects. But I think that's the only downside.
I have to have the sound effect. I think it's like it's so hollow almost without it.
I know. That's why it's great they give you the option, isn't it?
Yeah, it's class. Can I just ask you about the location? So it seems that it's not confirmed yet whether the last 16 matches will be played in the venues or in Lisbon, but certainly the quarterfinals, finals, semi-finals and finals are going to be played in 2 stadia in Lisbon. Why was Lisbon chosen to host it, do you know?
Well, I guess, it's sort of kind of easy access, isn't it? Like the final was meant to be in Turkey. I'm sure they're disappointed. Bit of a nightmare to get over there. Kind of access, I guess, is the main thing. Fine stadium, like they've recently held, major finals. It's a funny one with the last 16 because it kind of shut down right in the middle of those games, didn't it? And second leg to be played. I'm sure clubs, they have a lot of power. The guys who have home advantage for those last second legs, they want home advantage. I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm going to be honest with you, but I wouldn't be surprised if they just kind of ship everyone out and play those games because, and as you're knocked out, then you just go home because then you're just there on site and it's easy to control. And it's another month away, and I think they're going to monitor this virus as well and make a decision as late as humanly possible. Like, my big fear underneath it all, Joe, is that this virus hasn't gone away. And I watch a lot of the golf in America and I kind of follow it as well. And, like that first event on the PGA Tour in Texas, like Texas is on its knees with this virus, but the golf went ahead. And I think 7 between players and caddies, officials have pulled out or they've picked up the COVID-19. So I think it's going to be something they're going to monitor. And I think no one's getting carried away and we shouldn't get carried away yet,
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. At the end of the day, football and sport is fantastic to have back, but it needs to be done realistically and help the players and everybody involved has to come first. Speaking of which, so this actually kind of launches me nicely onto G.A.A. because it seems that the G.A.A. have accelerated their roadmap to return to play. So senior teams were allowed back training on Wednesday as opposed to next Monday, and full contact, which wasn't supposed to be allowed until the 20th of July, is going to be allowed from next Monday. Can you see any other kind of accelerated changes to that official roadmap when it was published a couple of weeks ago being made?
I can't, to be honest. I think I'm heavily involved myself in Club G.A.A. and I think clubs, just given the nature of them, it's a real cross section of life, and I think it's going to be, just ease things back, see how it goes. You have a lot of young kids involved in this, and I think there's all sorts of forms to be filled out online, and there's a module to be completed which I haven't done yet, so I don't know too much about it, but I know it takes about 15-20 minutes to complete it online and educate yourself about the situation. So I think the club stuff will kind of stay as it is, and there's going to be no big mad rush. I think if it had stayed to the original plan, we wouldn't even be at this stage yet, And I think teams went back on Wednesday, like our senior team was back on the field on Wednesday. And, I think they're delighted about it, but I think we're kind of we're easing away into it, I think big day, obviously, for the inter-county stuff, the big beast. The championship is going to be announced today. It's going to be straight knockout for Gaelic football. So the provincial championships will continue as is.
Mhm.
But when you lose, you're gone. Okay. And even the provincial finals, if you get to, say, any of the provincial finals and you lose, you're gone. And it'll go back to the old format pre-2001. It'll be All-Ireland semi-finals. And it's going to be novel because I kind of grew up with that, and it's kind of going back to the old days. The hurling, the draws are going to have to be, it was, as you know, a round robin series. It's just going to be straight knockout, although because there's only fewer teams in the hurling, they're going to have a second chance. So if you lose in the provincial championships, you'll come back in around, get an opportunity to qualify for the All-Ireland series. But I think it's going to be great.
And similar to the football was.
Yeah.
In the hurling. Okay, I wasn't clear on that.
So I'm looking forward to it because I think it's going to be novel, and officially I wouldn't be a fan of, the Super 8s. I just think this is given maybe the weaker counties a bit of a chance, one-off game. I do feel sorry for Westmeath. I was talking to a Westmeath man.
Yeah,
he's a neighbour of mine, and they've got the Dubs in the first round. And look, I think all the games are going to be in Croke Park or some of the bigger stadium. And it's definitely not going to be at Cusack Park now. It's going to be tough for them. They'll play a couple of league matches. They're going to complete the league just to give teams a few matches in the football league. But then it's straight into Dublin, and look, the likelihood is it's over for them before it begins. It's going to be tough. But I'm looking forward to it. All Ireland football final, I think it's the 20th of December. And then the hurling is the week before. It's going to be a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't wait. Yes. Yes, it is fair. Some things I saw the Westmeath manager was saying that he would have preferred if it wasn't that way. But for me, as a Scommon fan, playing Mayo in the first round of the championship, having beaten them in Castlebar last year, it couldn't build up to a better entrance to the championship for me. Return to play, that rivalry, intensity. You can't knock it, you can't beat it.
It's a one-off shootout.
Yeah, anything can happen.
You can't write them off. Honestly, God, they've taken years ago, and they've taken us down so many times.
That was actually terrible.
It's like straight shootout. It's like anything's possible. I think Ulster is going to be mental. Actually, that is going to be some crack. Yeah,
the whole thing will be good. It'll be great to see it unfold. I know that you're pressed for time, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode. And unfortunately, I'm sure you're going to get plenty of flack and abuse when this episode comes out from Liverpool fans, but it'll be, my friend.
Oh, lovely talking to you, Joe. Keep up the good work.
Indeed. Thanks a million. And that's it for another episode of Irish Media Network Sports Update. And from me, Joe Caulfield, and everyone at Irish Media Network, look after yourself, be good, and we'll see you next week.
Irish Media Network.